I feel as though it is only right we would start with Nacht der Untoten. Most people know this is the birthplace of the now well-known Nazi zombies mode that completely took the Call of Duty franchise by storm as soon as it was introduced. Though this may be the case, only a very small percentage of people understand the real-world connections that inspired the games that we know and love. In the 1930s, the Japanese constructed a command center for their airfield on Peleliu Island. If we have any World War II enthusiasts watching or World at War nerds like myself, you may remember this island from the Battle of Peleliu, as well as a few campaign missions that take place in the Pacific theater of World War II. Hard to forget when you got great men fighting alongside you like Roebuck and Polanski. We fight to take over this bunker during the campaign, as well as holding a defense inside of it against the undead. But this is not just some made-up location that they threw in a video game. This is a location that is possible to visit. Of course, maybe not in the best condition, but it is there whether you know it as the Nacht der Untoten Zombies map or if you know it as the old Japanese air headquarters. According to a sign sitting at this location, the first floor contained a guard room as well as a recreation room. It was described to also have a thick-walled bunker section that held a lot of transmitting material. I'm assuming this is all different types of tools that they use for communication inside the headquarters. The second floor of the bunker is described to have a wireless telegraph room as well as a receiving and transmitting room. They go further to describe the windows of the bunker being equipped with steel shutters. This was known as a Japanese strong point during the American invasion on the airfield. The Americans had a goal of taking this over so they could establish their own type of HQ, which was all in preparation for a possible attack on the Japanese mainland. If you were to look it up today, it will show up on an unnamed road in Peleliu, categorized as a historical landmark. Let's go ahead and take a quick break from all the island talk and head over to a very legendary multiplayer map, Dome. If you were to do any amount of research, you would probably come to the realization that we are indeed fighting on top of the well-known Reichstag, as they call it in Berlin. Not only the seat of parliament in Germany, but the building played a very large role in the Battle of Berlin. During this battle, the Reichstag quickly became the last line of defense for the Nazis. And if you remember the World at War campaign, this is also where we lost our great friend Dmitri. Similar to the campaign of World at War, the Soviet soldiers fought through Berlin all the way to the top of this building, where they eventually planted the Soviet flag and declared victory against Germany. The Reichstag now is actually one of the most visited locations in Germany. You can even make your way all the way to the top of the dome for a very impressive view over the city. Once again, not just a legendary map, but a legendary monument that was here before World War II and after World War II.
Using a mortar fired horizontally, a hole was smashed through one of the Reichstag's bricked-up entrances. Soviet troops poured inside.
Moving on to number 3, we are now visiting what has been named the most creepy and unsettling zombies map Treyarch has ever created. We're looking at the Okinawa sanatorium, of course known as Verruckt in the zombies community. Now, as for these mental institutions, these are actually something that the Nazis would use to support their efforts in killing all incurably ill, physically or mentally disabled people, as well as elderly people. Now, the Okinawa specifically had thousands of patients that were murdered or sent from there to other places like Poland, where they would be placed into ghettos or even concentration camps. They almost used these sanatoriums as a way to hide and disguise what they were actually doing to patients, when they were moving them, where they were moving them. The Okinawa specifically had about 5,000 people killed using oral tablets, hunger, as well as thousands of children that were part of a mercy killing or even used in medical experiments. Moving on to location number 4, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at Der Riese, or you could also call it the Giant, which is very interesting because when you try to trace this map back to some type of real life connection, there is actually something that is referred to as the Bell or the Giant. The Nazis had a secret construction project that was taking place in the Al Mountains of Poland. Before we go any further, take a look at this picture right here. If anybody played Zombies or Der Riese, you might notice this is very similar to the fly trap. Now, back to the Bell, which is a supposed secret Nazi weapon weapon that had the shape of a bell. This weapon was described to have anti-gravity properties and was a part of the Nazis' advanced technology experiments. Something that really started to make sense for me was the fact that the theories about this weapon spoke about things like time travel. This very easily could be the reason that Treyarch thought of and introduced teleporters into the zombies game mode.
The thing about the bell is that anyone who got within 600 feet of it got really, really sick.
Coming in at number 5, we have the multiplayer map Station, which is built on the idea of the Berlin train station, specifically the U-Bahn and S-Bahn tunnels. During what could be referred to as the race for the Reichstag, orders were issued to stop all traffic coming through these tunnels. Some of these train lines ran under bodies of water, which really helped the order if the goal was to actually stop the traffic in the efforts to stop some type of offensive attack. To actually carry out these orders, the Waffen-SS decided to plant explosive charges through the tunnels. There was actually a lot of railway engineers that didn't agree with this or didn't want it to happen, and it went as far as one of them trying to stop it, which in no surprise, he winded up being shot and killed. Something interesting though about these orders, there was an SS Major General who was interviewed in a book, and he actually claims that they thought about flooding the tunnels but never actually gave the order. The reason is that they determined it would only flood up to a few feet and basically have little to no effect defensively. Rumors blame the SS, but who ordered it and executed it is argued to be unknown. Moving on to number 6, we are going to take a step back from Berlin and head over to Japan, specifically Okinawa. As you can see, we are on the multiplayer map Cliffside, and let me first say this, maybe I'm wrong, but Cliffside looks very similar to the Suicide Cliff in Okinawa. There was Japanese soldiers that would jump to their deaths just to escape the Americans because of how bad they've heard they could be. And we're not talking about just soldiers, we are talking about women, I'm pretty sure even babies and children. These cliffs were known as the last defensive line of the Japanese forces on Okinawa. You have eyewitnesses that have claimed to see hundreds of bodies below the cliff, and you also have numbers in the thousands that have been sighted. Something that's always wild to me when I look back at these stories from World War II, it's the fact that a lot of these events, they were caught on camera. The idea that there were soldiers and entire teams put together to document the World War is mind-blowing. Now, if we take a look at the actual map, something you can notice about the majority of multiplayer maps, you usually cannot get outside of the maps. But there is one way out of the map Cliffside, and that one way would literally be jumping to your death. Now, maybe they didn't do that on purpose, and maybe that is a little bit of a reach, but if the map is possibly based on Suicide Cliff, I could see how this would make sense. So is it possible that the developers purposely made this an option? Maybe, but I'm also just a Treyarch fan, and I could be giving them a lot of credit for something that was very random and not even done on purpose.
They went up the cliffs. There's really rocky cliffs, high, at least 90 feet. And they would take the kids, little kids up, and they would hold them and jump off. And that was really, really sad. Mm-hmm. So I didn't like that, but we had an announcer with the bullhorn telling the Japanese women, "Don't jump, don't jump. We're not going to hurt you." Yeah. And but they jumped anyway.